My great pleasure to welcome you all, live in Sharm el-Sheikh and online, to this session on ImpactTech for Scale and Action. My name is Christopher Laurel, and together with my co-moderator, Regina Sommer, live from the Swedish pavilion at COP27, we will guide you through what ImpactTech is all about and why Sweden has become the global epicenter for these kinds of companies. For those of you who are new to the concept of ImpactTech, you have probably heard about unicorns, companies with an evaluation of over $1 billion American dollars. ImpactTech is similar, but instead of having a $1 billion valuation, it's all about having a positive impact on more than 1 billion people on the globe. In essence, ImpactTech is centered on the intentional use of responsible technology and science to benefit people and the planet by addressing a major social or environmental problem. In Sweden, which is the second only to Silicon Valley in producing unicorns, we are also leading within ImpactTech. Throughout this session, we will be joined by many of our Swedish ImpactTech companies that are redefining industry by industry. We will also have ImpactTech accelerators, investors, academia, as well as representatives from the public sector. And without further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome our first panel here from Stockholm. So with us, we have Lisa Nolin, which is the Managing Director Nordics at Norrsken. Norrsken is the home of a lot of inspiring ImpactTech companies that are bringing real change, not only in the Swedish system, but also across the globe. We also have Hanna Gran, Sustainability Lead at Spotify. Spotify needs no further introduction, I believe. You have more than 450 million users worldwide, and you are a household brand that has very much redefined how we think of listening and especially music. And last but not least, we have Kristoffer Lewandowski from Heart Aerospace, and you're the head of research and development programs. Heart is very much in the business of changing the way in which we think of aviation by electrifying aviation and dealing with a lot of the aviation industry's sustainability challenges. So Lisa, Kristoffer, Hanna, a pleasure to have you. Welcome. We are reaching the final hours of COP, and soon there will be a declaration coming out of Sharm el-Sheikh. From your perspective, what would you see as the best possible outcome? If we start with you, Lisa.
So I'm a skeptic here. I don't really know what to expect because I think we had hopes that are high. We all know we don't have time. I think we need to sort of have a massive engagement, and I think more than anything, I wonder if we will have that. So it's rather, I think I would like to speak about what should be coming out, because I'm not sure what we're hoping for. I don't know if you guys have any different view of it.
Go ahead.
No, I agree, but I think it's important to remember as well that this is one thing, one event a year, and what I really take with me from the COP is just all the meetings, everything from the young delegates to the innovators, the scientists, everyone coming together really and trying to see the solution perspective. And I think that's what I bring with me, and I think that's more important than the actual kind of agreement, because more things are happening in the company world, I would say.
Yeah, I would like to second that on focusing on the solutions, because I think ImpactTech companies are focused on providing fact-based solutions. So if we can see a transition with policymakers moving from focusing on the problems to focusing on the actual fact-based solutions, I think that's one of the expectations that I have, or hopes.
All right, very good. So you all represent organizations that play different roles in the ecosystem when it comes to ImpactTech. From your perspectives, what does ImpactTech mean? Not only from a Swedish perspective, but rather from a global perspective. If we start with you, Kristoffer. To give a bit of context, you're still in the beginning of your journey of bringing electric aviation to the world. So has companies like Spotify and all the ones coming after that Norrsken, for example, has been involved in, acted as guiding stars, in your case, would you say?
Yeah, and I mean, it has. We have one of our early backers in the room right now. So, and and that's something that we're, of course, very proud of. Being a company working in ImpactTech, I think we have a responsibility to show what we are actually doing and what sort of impact we can have. And I think that's what we need to do. Again, working fact-based and building on the sort of culture that we have here in Sweden. I think that has benefited us a lot. Being able to have these sort of open conversations in between startups and having that culture where we can collaborate without a polished facade, no market boundaries in between us. And I think that has benefited us.
Anna, I'm curious, we have heard Christopher talk about the little sister, the little brother perspective in a sense. You're the big brother, the big sister. What's your take on the role that you have played, and also how do you sort of give back to the community, in the ImpactTech community?
I think that's one of the reasons why Sweden is such a strong hub when it comes to ImpactTech, because it is a lot about sharing. First of all, I think it's also about changing the narrative a bit so that it's actually way more attractive and fun, and way more about starting something than rather giving something up to actually be a sustainable company. And that goes for, electric flight. Who wouldn't want to be on an electric flight? And the same thing that you frame your companies are also gets people excited about the future. And I think that's for our product as well. Few people think about the sharing economy as something super sexy maybe. But today, most people don't think even twice about not actually owning that record, but just sharing that music. So our ambition is definitely to continue framing that and have that kind of positive mindset around it, but also share. Everything that we find, even though we fail with something, we want to share that. Because if we do that together, it's way easier to get there faster, and we don't have any time at all. So that's our ambition, is to really see what we can do as a tech company, what it means, everything from streaming emissions to how we use cloud more efficiently, things that we know a lot of companies are struggling with. So we want to share, and I think most people, what I see, do that as well, is really in this together.
So we've heard the little sister, little brother perspective. We have heard the big brother, big sister perspective. I'm curious, Lisa, you're the one keeping the whole family together, I would say. You have both the older ones that have come a bit further, like Spotify, but you also have the ones that are in the beginning of their journey, like Aerospace. What's your take on the role of ImpactTech going beyond Sweden?
So just a few sentences first about what Norrsken is, because it can be complicated. What we try to be is a movement for ImpactTech entrepreneurs. Why impact? Well, simply, like you were both saying, we don't really have time. I really truly think that it's going to be impact entrepreneurs driving the future changes that we need, because we do see that politics is going too slow. An impact then, that is to intrinsically have a positive change on the world through your business model. And as your company grows, so should the impact that you have on the world. Secondly, tech, well, it's the only way to scale solutions in an efficient way. At least I don't know of any other way. So for us, ImpactTech, that's really the genesis of the future. So what we try to do, we started in Stockholm, is to simply provide a physical meeting place that provides access and facilitates networks, capital and investments, future customers, everything you may need in order to scale your business. And we now try to take this globally by opening hubs in Rwanda, in Kigali, as well as in Barcelona. And coming back to, I don't think we could have opened Norrsken anywhere else but in Stockholm. It has to do a bit of the legacy, where we came at our only founder is one of the founders out of Klarna, but it also has to do with the climate that Stockholm has. And that is really what we are trying to export now. Because ImpactTech and impact entrepreneurship, large or small, I really truly feel that is the way to go. And if we can embody anything in those physical hubs, it is really to be positive about the future.
And I have to add, I think you create an amazing community and spirit when you're in those hubs as well. So yeah, you very much succeeded with that.
And that's amazing, thank you. Because if we can aspire more to do the same, because it's really quite simple. If these entrepreneurs succeed, like you guys have succeeded, we all win. It is quite that simple.
You have come already a far way when it comes to getting this model of ours on export in Kigali and in Barcelona. But I'm curious when it comes to Spotify and Heart, how can you, from your perspectives, see that the world might be able to steal with pride, as it's so called? Where are the low-hanging fruits, if we start with you, Hanna?
One thing that we really focus on is also how we scale this. Because we are a rather small team that focus on climate at Spotify, and that's the way I prefer to have it as well. So instead, what we really focused on is integrating this into every single piece of Spotify and the way we work, everything from ads to especially the engineering side of it, of course. And I think that is one of the things that hopefully I think we need more of as well, that it just doesn't sit with people that have a sustainability background or so, but that we quickly can educate a lot of people. And there I think a lot of the good things are happening with educations and so on, but I think companies need to take a better responsibility there as well. When they onboard people, not only you get trained for your task, but maybe we throw in some of the, what is greenhouse gas emissions, some of the basics as well, so that people feel that they have the mandate, but also the skills that they can do, to actually be able to do more sustainability things in their daily work. So I think that's one of the things at least we focus on a lot, and I think if we can scale that, we will get there so much faster.
And here, if I may add, I think the urgency is actually playing in our favor, because today everybody understands that the world's greatest challenges are also the world's biggest opportunities. It wasn't really like that 5 years ago. It was passed to the side. Everybody, it's sort of affected one way or another by this urgency. And that's where I really think that if you can play a role model, the stealing with pride will probably accelerate even more.
Yeah, and I want to be humble about this. I think I have two people that know more about this, what we should export, because you've come further.
No, me neither.
But what we've really appreciated with this sort of Swedish startup climate is that we can have those sort of open conversations, that we can talk to each other and learning through older siblings, essentially. So that's probably a low-hanging fruit. What is maybe not a low-hanging fruit is that I think the Swedish startup culture starts even earlier than that, because we have very good education in Sweden and it's free for all. And a lot of the programs that we have in Sweden are also working tightly together with industry. So you get real industrial problems that you get to solve early in your career, even during your education. I think that sort of fosters a mentality of solving real problems that will really help you when you graduate.
Thank you so much, Christopher, Hanna, and Lisa, for sharing your perspectives. What we have done now is to get to know a few of the siblings in the ImpactTech community coming out of Sweden. But there are other actors too. There are other siblings, and who knows, perhaps an aunt and uncle too. That will be the focus on the second panel, live from COP27 and the Swedish Pavilion. So I leave the word to you, Regina Sommer.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Very interesting panel from Stockholm. My name is Regina Sommer, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for International Collaboration at Vinnova, the Swedish Innovation Agency. A quite recent report from McKinsey Sustainability claims that the Nordics can become the next sustainability valley. We are already the second most unicorn producing country or region actually in the world. So the sky is the limit, right? Well, the European Commission just this summer launched an innovation agency where they raised the importance of deep tech startups and scale-ups in accelerating the transition that is needed to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. So, Sweden is one of the top innovation countries in the world, and this panel will focus on the broader Swedish innovation ecosystem and how it leads to impactful innovations from different sectors. So, with me here in the pavilion, I have Jenny Elfsberg from Vinnova. Please welcome to the stage. I also have Martin Edlund from Minesto. And last but not least, Jenny Janfeldt from Einride. Welcome. So I'm going to start with you, Jenny, my dear colleague. How do you think that the fantastic development of the companies that we've heard about and the companies that are on stage and many other impact companies in Sweden, how do you see that this has become possible in Sweden? Why? What are we doing right here?
What are we doing right, maybe? I think it's mentioned already, the education, the free education and also the safety net in Sweden. I think that actually helps. That, I mean, you can just graduate from university and say, oh, maybe I should start a company. Or maybe you don't even graduate. It's that safety net and the education system, I think it helps. Also, Sweden is a country of engineers or problem solvers. So I think there is something in the DNA of the weird ancient people that took all the way up from Africa up to northern to, you know, want to fix problems and don't rely on anyone else. And then I would also say what is also already mentioned, the close collaboration, the openness, like the trust, sharing ideas with each other and helping out. I think those are the ones I would mention. You want to add something?
Maybe I could just add the fact that, I mean, I think it's here at, I mean, being at COP27, I think it's important to mention also the fact that we invest 3.4% of our GDP in research and innovation in Sweden, and 2/3 of this come from our industry, 1/3 from our government. So just that is just a very important collaboration that creates all the possibilities that Vinnova enables, I would say, and that also is part of one of the reasons we have this fantastic ecosystem. I'm not going to give actually the microphone to Einride to give us just a short intro, a pitch of who you are and what you do.
What is
and in
Einride?
what sector, of course.
So Einride is a tech freight company. We provide shipping solutions based on electric, autonomous, and digital technology. That's the elevator pitch. So the transport industry has been slow in adopting new technologies and also slow in reducing emissions. And we think it's time for a new type of logistic system, a smart, green transport ecosystem.
Good. So, Minesto, please.
Yes, we will provide you with the sustainable electricity you need to fuel your vehicles. So we are in sustainable renewable energy. We convert ocean currents and tidal currents into electricity by flying our dragons in the oceans. It is a true impact technology in the sense that we can build hundreds of gigawatts. We can supply renewable energy to areas of the world where it may be very difficult to use solar and wind, island communities, remote places, sometimes where land is scarce, but where the oceans move in a fantastic way. We are doing it already in the Atlantic, in the Faroe Islands, at 100 kilowatt scale. We're building the first megawatt machine, and the plan is, of course, to populate the oceans with thousands of energy-producing dragons.
Amazing, amazing. Both of you, amazing companies that we're really proud of. Well, we heard the first panel, Heart Aerospace, Norrsken and Spotify, talk about some of the important issues that are important for Swedish impact tech companies to lead the way and develop further. And some of the things that they were mentioning is, of course, the collaboration between the public and the private sector in developing, the sharing, the locomotive model that you were mentioning as the big sister, big brother model. What would you say, do you agree? Or do you have anything to add on that? What is important for you to develop in Sweden and globally?
Can I go? Yes, yes, of course we agree. And Sweden has a long history of within the transport industry, which is where I come from, with automotives leading the way in many parts of the sector. And as a disruptor to this industry, we're looking at the three tech shifts: electrification, automation, and digitalization. And when we look at Sweden, I mean, Sweden is the best place for innovation. Mentioning three, the students coming out, I mean, the talent coming out of the universities. And secondly, the universities and their approach to innovation and technology. And then thirdly, agencies like yourself being supportive to new ideas and new innovation in tech.
Super interesting. I can actually add one thing here, that Sweden has 36 public universities and university colleges. And if you count in the private ones too, there are 60 university colleges in Sweden. Talk about talent. So over to you, sorry.
Yeah, I think for us, one thing that is extremely important being in the Swedish context is that we can access real world-class engineering capabilities. We're in the Gothenburg area. We need a lot of advanced control systems, material science. With the automotive sector, we also have a lot of fluid dynamics capabilities. So by sort of reprofiling industrial capabilities, we believe that we have what we need in order to create a completely new industry by recombining technologies. So that's a key factor for us. Another one is also that we actually have a lot of, if we look back at our development, that we have really strong seed funding environments in Sweden, so we can accelerate the early stages of development a little bit quicker. And it's both the public system, which you represent in this, but also private, really high quality investors. So for us, a company as Granite or former Midrock, for instance, has been with us since very early days, and is an example of one of those that also have a large portfolio of impact investments.
Thank you. And we heard a lot of good things about the Swedish innovation ecosystem so far, but I mean, no one's perfect, right? So I would like to ask you, all three of you, what could the Swedish innovation ecosystem learn from other countries? I'll start with you, Minesto.
From other countries or in general?
In general, other ecosystems.
No, I think that one generic challenge, if you look at impact technologies, the energy sector, renewable energy for new renewables, and other process technologies where you need to, not only as we're doing, we're proving that the technology works. We have the performance we need, but we're doing it still at small scale. So in order to make renewables bankable, you need to prove it with commercial scale investments in projects. And that means that you will have to access a little bit more risk-willing capital at a scale that sort of the normal innovation system is not used to. And particularly in a context where we are in a hurry. So I think to think hard about how to do that, how to match private project investments with the public sector and bring that into this transition, I think is a key challenge.
Yes. Einride, please.
Yes, of course we can learn. We can learn from everybody, is my view. Having a past working with emerging markets, we can see how the tech development and digitalization has made them leap, taking steps that we haven't, that we have had to do, but they can leap, in advance much quicker than we have. And I think that's also what we're trying to do at Einride, looking at future solutions. And it's really inspirational, and that's why we have our autonomous electric solution as well.
Jenny, so from Vinnova's perspective, what can we learn from other ecosystems in the world?
Yeah, I would say I agree with her. We need to have more willingness to get out of the comfort zone and take some risk. If you want to challenge, you need to go a little bit bigger and bolder. And then also we are in Sweden, we love our comfort zone. We love to have evidence. We are fact-based. And here I think because we are going into an era where nothing is proven, we have to explore and experiment to fix this transition. Sweden needs to be more curious, like what I don't understand, I can reach out to someone else. We are a little bit of conformists, but it has also kept us alive for many years. But I think we need to be more opportunistic.
Thank you all. So, well, COP is coming to an end. Literally, this is the last day, the solution day. That's why we introduce many solutions during this panel session. But what would you say that ImpactTech has contributed to accelerate the green transition and even further going forward here? How have you affected the transition so far?
For us as a company, I think that what we show with our roadmap plans in the Faroe Islands and in some other parts of the world is that there are solutions today that are enough to take us to 100% renewable energy systems. By combining the solutions we have today, including our dragons, in many parts of the world, this is just a matter of action and transition. And I think that's our, so far, biggest contribution.
Yes. And how has Einride contributed so far?
Well, I'm going to second that and say, well, you know, we have goals and we're measuring, and yes, we need standardization. But if you look at what we can do from Einride's side is provide the solution today in 2022, we can take action now to reduce emissions. And we're already live in Europe, we're already live in the US, and you know, going to new markets.
Yes. You're making it happen. So Jenny, to the funding agency, the government agency, how are you supporting this transition? Because you're not an ImpactTech scale up, but how do you support? How do you enable for these guys to move faster?
Yeah, well, I think what we have to do, besides the funding of projects and all that, is to actually, I don't know, shake up the scene and make sure everyone understands this needs to be transsectorial, it needs to be public, private sector, it needs to be a collaboration where we actually make it, you know, the technology and the community come together, we deploy it, we show, we pioneer the possible and inspire the rest of the world to do the transformation as well. That's what I think we should do.
Lovely words ending this session. So thank you very much for joining us here in the pavilion. And I give it up to you again, Christopher.
ImpactTech and how we can make sense of all the progress that we have made so far. We have a third panel, and joining us is no one else than Christian Rönn. You're the CEO of Normative. We also have with us Fredrik Udenfeldt, and you're the Vice President Product at Climate View. We have Victor Gallas from the Stockholm Resilience Center. You're one of the world-leading centers that we have coming out of Stockholm when it comes to sustainability and resilience-related aspects. And last but not least, we have Milton Malmström, Innovation Lead at Doconomy. And we are gonna try to untangle exactly where Doconomy, Climate View, and Normative starts and begins. Yeah. You're all making a lot of progress when it comes to the software side of the things that we need to do going forward. But first, we are going to bring in the academic perspective. Victor, you have been a part of the scientific negotiations, the scientific discussions that concerns the question that have made over 40,000 people travel to Sharm el-Sheikh. From your perspective, when we talk about the role of science education in the context of the ecosystem of climate tech, what's your take on that? How did we manage to find ourselves in scaling this ecosystem the way that we have done? And what does it mean for you in your role, would you say?
I mean, I think in general, just following the evolution of the Swedish tech ecosystem in this domain, because it has grown quite quickly in the last decade or last years, I would say it's been quite impressive. But from our perspective, and what we're seeing in our engagements are some gaps or some parts where actually we need further acceleration. I think a lot of the discussion in Sweden and in general in the tech sector has focused on mitigation and reducing emissions, which I think is good. I mean, we need it. Less, and what we really need to make a push now in the next years would be on adaptation, helping communities and countries and vulnerable groups to adapt. We're already at 1.1 degree warming, and that's likely to increase in the next decade. So how do we help communities and countries adapt? And the last point, which is much more difficult, but I know you're good at, is transformation. How can we help countries, businesses, municipalities, communities transform out of crisis into something better and different? And I think the tech sector has a lot to contribute there, but has a strong bias towards mitigation. Still important, but not the only thing.
I'm also curious to learn more about the international collaborations that you're running from the Stockholm Resilience Center. When you tell colleagues in other parts of the world that in this very city we can go from ImpactTech company to ImpactTech company within the sectors that Milton, Fredrik, and Christian represent, but also when it comes to hardware solutions like Minestos that Martin talked about during the second panel, but also electric aviation. Do people actually believe you when you tell them that this is all happening in one and the same city?
I think they do. And I think, I mean, there are several famous Swedish brands, so people are probably not surprised. And I think, I mean, part of the success story is, of course, the Swedish context that allows that kind of innovation to take place. So political stability, economic well-being, maybe also an increasing sense of purpose and meaning amongst young entrepreneurs. I think people are not surprised. I think the question now is, how do we scale this up, first of all, for it to have a big impact and really make a bend in emission curves? And the other thing is access in other countries, of countries with less resources or less capabilities. So I think those are the two big puzzles: scaling up and then access to a wider group of countries.
Let's turn to you, Milton.
Sure.
I'm curious to learn a little bit more about what this has meant for Doconomy coming out of Sweden. And one of the things that I'm really curious about is whether the international approach that we heard Hanna from Spotify describe in their journey to reach 450 million users. From your perspective, this global point of departure, is that something that you have got inspiration from in terms of the Stockholm impact and the Swedish impact tech ecosystem, or what would you describe your journey as?
You and I met in Egypt last week, by the way, and I think, first of all, I just want to say that being in that context and meeting all of the people who are coming to this question from a multitude of angles has been absolutely incredible. Doconomy is playing a small part in trying to solve the climate crisis, and listening to you, I think it makes a lot of sense to have a true conversation about it. I was thinking about it just today because I was reading on the damage and loss debate that is currently going on, and listening to Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, speaking on it. We, from the economy's perspective, are trying to do everything we can. I'm running the innovation lab together with some brilliant team members, and our job is to come up with sort of cutting-edge ways of using data and tools and language to mitigate climate change, where we're trying to place economic incentives in the right places so that we can drive capital towards the right ends, away from conspicuous consumption towards sustainable consumption. And there are so many ways to do that. We're engaging with a number of banks across the world. We have 40 banks live in 25 markets, and we're working on a number of innovative products that we can delve into at a different point. But I think we're learning a lot just from being in rooms with the likes of you and the likes of the people who are at COP27.
What you are very, very well known for at Doconomy is, for example, the lifestyle calculator that can help consumers identify the low-hanging fruits. Yeah. And turning from customers, kind of consumers, sort of to cities, Fredrik, I'm curious of hearing sort of your take on the internationalization aspect. You're working with cities across continents. Is there inspiration to be found in ImpactTech in the way in which it has been emerging and scaled in Sweden, would you say?
Oh, sure, yeah. So we work with many cities in Europe and now in North America as well. And Climate View builds a software platform for cities to manage and finance their climate transitions. And basically all cities everywhere almost have some sort of climate goal. Many European cities have very ambitious goals like net zero 2028, 2030. And of course, COP27 is all the COPs are basically to a high extent about setting goals and making pledges. And you can set all the goals you want. That's the easy part. I can decide to be climate neutral by tomorrow. That's easy. But it's not very actionable and it's not very doable. So to become that, you have to break it down into targets. And that's what we do. And to make it tangible and to something for the whole organization in the city to strive for. And technology, of course, is an essential part of that, not just an enabling, it's essential. Because what you do is you need to transform the way the city operates, the way people move around, the way people heat their homes. Because in the middle of the winter, you need heating, but you need sustainable heating. You need mobility. You need to fulfill your needs today, and you need to fulfill them in the future without causing emissions. And how do you do that? Well, you shift to cleaner technologies. So ImpactTech, for me, is basically how we live our lives in the future, and that's absolutely fundamental. And cities are the main playing ground for that. That's where most action is going to take place. That's where 70% of emissions come from, and that's where most people live. So it stands and falls with the cities and with technologies.
Would you say that you would have had perhaps a more local, regional point of departure if you would have been founded in another city, in another part of the world?
Well, coming from Sweden means that you fundamentally have a small market, so you have to get out of Sweden as quickly as you can to survive. So you need an international mindset. And I know this goes for basically all Swedish companies. So that, of course, helps. If we would have been a German company, I think we would have been pretty happy staying in Germany for a long time and then maybe considering to go abroad. So I think that's a big thing. I'm sure that goes for colleagues here as well. Sure. Being Swedish, you need to go abroad as soon as you can.
Let's turn to you, Christian. We have heard how software can help customers and consumers, how it can help institutional actors like cities. You're working with helping a lot of companies doing their part too. I'm going to ask you the same question because you are working with companies across the globe. Yeah. The international outlook and really sort of wanting to change a global system. Is there inspiration to be found in the ImpactTech phenomenon that we are seeing in Sweden?
I can answer the first part of the question, like, is it inspirational? I mean, of course it's inspirational. So I mean, it's totally amazing that, the front runner in terms of delivering actionable data to end consumers through banks are Stockholm-based Doconomy. It's amazing that, the platform that delivers the insights to municipalities and the public sector is Climate View. And we at Normative, as you said, our vision and mission is to make known the sustainability impact and reduce the sustainability impact of all corporate activities on the planet. And for doing so, I think Sweden has been an amazing kind of springboard. Of course, you need to go to other places eventually, but I think the overall awareness here is really high. And for everyone listening that doesn't know what we do at Normative, so we essentially help companies account for their full carbon footprint and give them the actionable insights that they need in order to reduce their carbon footprint. And we're especially focused on global value chains. I mean, the decarbonization of the world economy is the decarbonization of these global value chains. And in order for that to happen, you need the awareness, you need to calculate and account for the carbon emissions, but you need to move the right money into the right technologies, which is what the previous panel and previous panels at all of COP has been all about. So I think it's kind of amazing, the ecosystem that we see emerging out of Sweden, and with global ambitions, of course.
All right, good. We have one of the experts that can provide us with a forecast of where the negotiations will end with us here in this panel. And I'm looking at you, Victor. So I'm curious, how will it end based on all your expertise and experience?
I think it's way too early to say. I mean, there's some things that we should be happy about and some things that we should be worried about. So let's begin with those things that we should be happy about. We should be happy about the fact that multilateralism, meaning that global collaboration on climate change, is still alive. Right? We've been through a pandemic. The war in Ukraine has put major stresses on the world's countries. And still we're able as a global community to come together and try to create rules where we coordinate and act on climate change. I think that's positive. The negative side of this is that it's not enough. We know already. The commitments that countries have traveled to Egypt with are not enough. They don't take us below 1.5 degrees. So I think we need to balance those two things, both the positive and the negatives of that. And then there are a couple of key things that I'm keeping my eyes on for the final round, if you want to hear those. Please. I think so. One of them is, of course, the 1.5 degree target. Is it going to be alive after negotiations? Is it going to be in the documents? What's the wording around that? That's first. The second one, and the important message of keeping fossil fuels in the ground. I think how is that going to be reflected in the document? Phasing out fossil fuel subsidies, for example, or phasing down, for example. That's sort of the nuance that I think is important. The third point, the discussion on climate finance and loss and damage that you mentioned in the beginning. Like, are we going to see something tangible here where countries actually deliver resources to vulnerable countries or not? And then the last point, the role of nature-based solutions, the role of the living planet for us to be able to stay away from a dangerous climate future. To me, those are 4 key aspects, and 4 aspects that can guide the tech sector in Sweden as well.
All right, thank you. I'm going to ask a similar kind of question to you, Milton. And it's not related to how they likely will end up, but how they should end up, especially from the perspective of impact tech companies that have a tendency of not being the most patient persons around. So what would you really want to see coming out of the negotiations, Milton?
I mean, the frank and honest answer is that after COP26, the Glasgow Alliance of Net Zero, of which Mark Carney is co-chair, launched a fund that would funnel private capital of $130 trillion into a net zero economy. Just a week before COP27, the clause that said that you weren't supposed to be investing in fossil fuels got dropped. And so that was transparently, it was because the prices were favorable because of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. And what I would like to see coming out of COP27 is that the private capital that isn't currently being devoted to the ends with which it should be devoted is actually done in the right way. And I think that the role that the companies that we're working with and companies like ours can help create the technologies that's necessary to enable the transparency with which those companies are operating, so that you can actually see whether the proceeds are used towards green ends or whether they're used towards brown ends. And I would think that would be the key outcome I'd like to see out of COP27.
Frederick, are you seeing the same thing on your wish list, or is there other things that you would like to add?
No, I agree, and just a greater sense of clarity, I think, and alignment among countries is important. And we work on the city level primarily, and you have these national goals and contributions, but for those to trickle down to the city, that takes time. The city goal doesn't automatically get updated just because the national goal gets updated. And that's the way most countries work anyway, and they have their own elected leaders. So you have an alignment issue across many different levels, and the clearer you can get at the top level, the easier it is for the lower levels to follow. So that's a key thing that comes out of these meetings is clarity. And lack of clarity can be very, very bad in that sense. So that's what I would hope for.
Christian, from your perspective.
Yeah. So same question, basically.
Yeah.
So one thing that we did before COP is that we all are probably aware of the UN emissions gap report and the fact that we're heading towards 2.8 degrees or so. And that's looking at the commitments of countries. And I think you mentioned, that has to trickle down, right, to cities. And inside of cities, you have companies, right? So it needs to trickle down to companies as well. So we started to look at the net zero commitments or reduction targets of 1,000 companies. Turns out that those 1,000 companies, their global emissions in their operations and value chain equate to 77% of global emissions in total. So that means that is pretty good news. That commitment gap, at least from an enterprise perspective, is being filled. But the most important thing is then what are we doing to hold those businesses with net zero targets accountable so they actually go there? Because right now there is this accuracy gap where most of those net zero commitments have very low integrity because the kind of carbon accounting is not even comparable between different legal entities. So something that we would like to see more of is standardization. So for instance, the ISO standard, the defining net zero, that is obviously a good achievement, but we would really like to see that in terms of carbon accounting and governments holding companies to higher account on their net zero targets and performance on a year-to-year basis.
All right, good. Thank you so much, Christian Rohn from Normative, Fredrik Uddenfelt from Climate View, Victor Gallas from the Stockholm Resilience Center, and last but not least, Milton Malmström from Doconomy. With that said, we have during this session been joined by many of our Swedish impact tech companies that are truly redefining industry by industry, as well as having impact tech accelerators, investors, academia, and representatives from the public sector too. From where I'm standing, the message is very clear. The name of the game for impact tech companies that are originating from Sweden, as well as all the other actors that are part of the impact tech ecosystem, is to use technology for good, to solve many of the major social and environmental problems that the world is facing. They all have an international outlook and ambition to build the clean, green, and resilient industries of tomorrow, right here, right now. Just as COP27 is approaching its end, so are the sessions from the Swedish Pavilion. And in fact, this is the very last session of the over 60 sessions that have been hosted from the Pavilion during this year's Conference of the Parties. On behalf of the industrial partners to Sweden during COP27, I would like to extend our thanks to Business Sweden and André Hedberg with team for a fantastic work throughout these 2 weeks. I believe that we together have truly pioneered the possible. Thank you and good night.